Welcome, golf fans, pursuers of knowledge in the almighty dollar. This is your golf guru bringing you the 2023 AT&T Byron Nelson. This is my Before the Lock show where I'm going to go over everything from ownership projection, weather. We're going to talk about all the withdrawals that we've seen. And I've even ran a few showdown models for you guys for round one, something else that typically I don't do, but I wanted to throw that in. And with all that said, thanks for stopping by. Give me about 20 minutes. It's going to be a quick show, but just to give you that final information you need before locking in those DFS lineups or any final bet thoughts. Okay, let's go talk a little golf. And not so much golf, let's talk about weather, because it seems like, well, last weekend at the Wells Fargo, we had probably the best weather we've had in a while where we didn't have any stops or delays, but it is looking like that is going to be the case, at least right now on Wednesday around noontime Eastern. It looks like take a look at Thursday. From what I see, actually looks pretty clean, but there is a chance of rain in the morning. But again, the wind's a factor, and we'll jump over on Wind Finder and look at the super forecast breakdown, because it does look like guys at the early tee times, at least on Thursday, might have an advantage from that wind. But if it's raining on them, who knows, that could come out. Then it's saying Friday might be one of the more drier days, but the windiest days will be Thursday, Friday, is what it's stating if you kind of read down here. But they are still now estimating a possible inch of rain over the weekend. But it's looking like at least the cell that they were tracking is kind of moving a bit, and it shouldn't be as bad. So fingers crossed. My biggest thing is we don't have a lot of stops and starts, that we don't have they have to end the tournament short, because we have the PGA Championship coming up the next weekend. So I highly doubt that they want to finish this tournament on a Monday. And then with that said, of course, I literally tweeted out as soon as I downloaded my picks video and the betting show and the preview that I literally jumped on the Golf Channel and saw that Jordan Spieth actually withdrew from the tournament. And I'm kind of curious for my own self. So, right, the PGA is his last tournament that he needs to win to get the career Grand Slam. And then, of course, I tweeted out early, I don't know, probably around the Masters, that he kind of went on and had a quick presser about how much golf he's played and that he's wore out. I'm wondering, yes, they're stating that he's got a wrist injury, and maybe that is the fact, but if it was more of, hey, I need to take this week off, I need the time off, and I need to go prep for the PGA. So we'll see how that all shakes out, because right now people are stating that if it is a serious wrist injury, that then it looks like he's not going to be in the PGA Championship. Now, on the flip side of that, right, he is a huge ambassador for AT&T. He's kind of like the key focal point. Of course, he grew up in Dallas. So it's kind of one of those things, it's kind of hard to figure out, would he actually pull out of this without actually having a real injury to prep for the PGA, or is there something more serious to it? I guess we'll find out more next week. And then, of course, you had a bunch of other guys withdraw. I'm not going to go through all the names. You'll see them on, of course, DraftKings when you are pulling up the app. I think they looked at the weather forecast, same thing, and just kind of said, you know what? This looks like a mess, and I think I'm just going to pass. So, okay, so actually the PGA Tour always does this, and it's kind of interesting to me, and I usually save it for the next year, but some shot link stats that they kind of culminate, and it was kind of interesting, so we'll go over it real quick. No shocker that because of these large greens, like what we just saw at the Mexico Open, and of course what I talked about at the Tournament of Champions, TPC Craig Ranch has one of the easiest to hit from 125 and to hit the green, hence why we're not really looking around the green. So I kind of just confirmed that. And then what I was more kind of interested in was, again, this putting outside of 25 feet, or, it's saying proximity average is 40. And it's kind of interesting that they did not pull in Quail, because on what I heard, at least during the broadcast, 43 feet was the average at Quail Hollow for Wells Fargo. I guess a bit of it is because this is stating it was just for the last year. So interesting. But the Mexico Open, the Riv, Bay Hill, and Memorial, TPC Craig Ranch. So I actually put together a little different model for us from a showdown perspective, looking at the guys that do well putting outside of 25 feet. And then, of course, no shocker, which we knew, most birdies on the tour last year, hence some of the changes it seems like they made to the course. The, number 12 turned into, from a par 5, a very easy par 5, to a par 4, a long par 4. Also, it looks like they've grown up the rough. So we'll see if that does anything. Maybe the weather slows these guys down a little bit. I don't mind a score fest from a fantasy perspective. It's kind of fun, to see a lot of birdies made and kind of trying to track. It's not as easy to predict that, right? A lot of guys can have that one streaky 8 under round on an easy course that is going to be hard to peg down like a Jonas Blix or something like that out of nowhere. But most birdies on tour. So what I did also is I ran a model, which we already were looking at a lot of these. I was kind of shocked. I swear I did not see this beforehand. That Keen Trace came in. I knew that it was a birdie fest for the Barbasol, but also we had already Shriners in there. And I did look at Wyndham, but I just felt like the course is quite a bit different. I believe that's a par 70, and it's a shorter track and a little more tighter, but it does come up, and we do see guys typically shoot some around 15 to 18 under at that course. And then the CC of Jackson, the Chicken Open, the Sanderson Farms. So I plugged that in. And then a highest birdie or better percentage from the rough. Again, just kind of confirming that at least previously, again, large greens and that the rough was down. But I mentioned it's going to be close to 3 inches of rough. So again, and a lot of the same courses. And we looked also at TPC San Antonio where we played the Valero. That was more of just looking at courses in Texas. And then also last year, TPC Craig Ranch gave up the most eagles at 104. Keen Trace was second. The Summit Club, I was thinking about that, but that was for the CJ Cup back in 2021. They've kind of shifted that around in Vegas since COVID. They played, Shadow Creek before that, and then I forgot where they had it last year. I was kind of shocked Riviera, again, popped in there for the most eagles. I guess it's maybe some of those drivable par 4s, but they're not that easy, like number 10. And then again, the Wyndham comes up. So with all that said, I did some round 1 showdown analysis real quick and this should have all the guys that are actually in the field. If somebody would draw within the meantime, there's nothing I could do about that. The only thing I'm a little bit bummered is that Fantasy National, typically if you pull up the round 1 costing, so the salary should be what you see if you pull up the showdown, but typically I get the tee times with it, which is really nice because then you can separate the guys, early morning wave and then of course the afternoon wave, depending on how you want to play. And so I'm hoping that comes in later. I apologize, but of course you can go on the PGA Tour and find out where these guys' tee times are at. With all that said, what this model is looking at is I made some changes up here to the stroke gain categories. I think I kept the approach at 30%. But I got rid of driving distance and just went with ball striking. And again, if you don't know, that is taking in the driving distance off the tee and approach. So it's really putting a heavy weight on guys that are really good from tee to green, if you want to say. Then I added that outside of 20 feet putt at 15%. I kept that proximity of 200 plus in at 10, but then I added the birdies at 15% and the eagles at 5%. And then just pulled up the last 12 rounds of golf these guys have played because there's, the Wells Fargo and the Mexico Open now. Not that all these guys played in an event, but a lot of similarities, as I mentioned in the preview show, of how you need to play those courses. You got that 200 plus shows up a ton at both courses. You got huge greens. Around the green is not as prevalent at those courses, specifically Vendata, Puerto Vallarta, I guess the simplest way to put it. Okay, with all that said, no shocker that Scotty Scheffler pops up number 1, Sammy Stevens number 2, Nate Lashley, Hideki Matsuyama, Terrell Hatton, Seabez, EVR, Tom Hoagie, Dylan Wu, Michael Kim, Suwoo Kim, Carson Young, Kevin Roy, a guy that I mentioned quite a bit, who I think is a good play at 6,500, Kevin Chappell, and then Lucas Glover, my buddy, who cannot putt, but does show up here. And he is, he's a great ball striker, and that's hence what you see right here. And also he won, I think, either the U.S. Open or the PGA. It was a long time ago. I think it was the U.S. Open. Anyways, with all that said, again, I just wanted to highlight, again, this is only looking at the last 12 rounds of golf and against this new kind of, simplified model, if you want to put it. And then the next thing I wanted to look at was against those comp courses that we were just talking about. So again, where they play the Wyndham, would be also the Mexico Open, where they played at Vendata, Keen Trace, and TPC Summerland. So all those courses that I was showing you that they were referencing, I had most of them, but I wanted to take a look again against this model, how it came up. And I took a larger sample of data. Now, some of these guys have not played those courses as much, specifically Terrell Hatton and maybe Ben Griffin, because he's, of course, a rookie on the PGA Tour. But again, which I believe off comp courses, Trey Mullinax came up number 1, which, again, as I mentioned, he won the Barracuda last year. Hideki Matsuyama, Tom Kim, which I stated, where I kind of starting to, I don't want to say pigeonhole, but where I think Tom Kim is going to have more success is at a birdie fest. Not so far as he's shown me that he can handle like the mini majors or the majors yet. So we'll see how that, works out. But right now, not a bad play, especially with Jordan Spieth out. Might be a guy that you want to plug in. Luke List shows up. Austin Eckroat, Tom Hoagie, Scott Stallings, Siwoo, Terrell Hatton, Neesmith, CT Pan, James Hahn, Ryan Palmer, Roger Sloan. This is crazy. I actually, this was a while ago. I was trying to figure out what happened to this guy, and I think he like lost his card. I wasn't sure if he was trying to get it back, but he is showing in the field, and he would have his moments. I used to would put Roger Sloan and Patrick Rogers together sometimes. They just kind of remind me a little bit of similarities of how they play the game. They could be super streaky and score a ton and some not. But again, the Canadian, I guess, somehow is back on the PGA Tour, and I don't have an answer. I don't know if it's under a medical exemption or, I don't even know if he's ever actually won a tournament, so it wouldn't be under past champions. I don't know. But somehow he's here. I've not dived into how he got qualified back to a PGA tournament. And then also Ben Griffin rounds out the bottom. And then the last thing I'll show you, now, this is actually using what I call my showdown model. I've showed this maybe a couple times before, but it is removing really any stroke gain kind of data. It is just looking at the scoring side. And also what I'm pulling up here is Thursday, first round, and looking back at the last 4 tournaments, just round 1. I guess that's the simplest way to put it. And then I've got birdies at 50%, eagles at 5%, bogey avoidance at 25%, and birdie or better opportunities gained. You'll notice I don't have pars in here because, it's a 1.5. I think it's showdown for a par. And I'm more concerned about these 4 areas, right? Making sure, A, that they're not losing a point or a 1. It's almost 2 points. 1.8 if you get a bogey. Getting a lot of opportunities, but really the heavy bulk of where these guys score for you is that birdie getting 5.75 points. And then, of course, an eagle is great. It's technically 2 birdies combined. Okay, with all that said, if you're curious for the first round, looking past the last 4 tournaments, who's got the best ranking against those 4 key kind of scoring categories, you got Adam Scott, Scotty Scheffler, Stefan Jaeger, Michael Kim, Sean O'Hare, Jimmy Walker, Jason Day, Andrew Novak, Bryce Garnett, Dylan Wu, Ryan Palmer, Bill Haas, Tanya Goyo, Matty Kuchar, and MJ Duffy. That is the guys that are showing up for first round. So if you're even thinking about playing a first round later, not a bad list. And there is guys that I have noticed that will come hot out of the gates. Now, of course, it is a little tee time dependent. Typically, you'll see some of them, off the wall names that have a real early tee time come out and actually shoot well because the greens are brand new cut. There's no marks on them. The wind is down. Typically, the greens don't firm up as much. They're kind of got that moisture from the air. So there's a lot of reasons why a lot of guys that play showdown typically shoot a lot of guys out in the morning. And, especially if you're seeing the winds, I will probably also do that for this Thursday, tomorrow upcoming, because again, it is showing through wind finder, which we'll look at, that it's going to pick up probably, I think, around noon is when the winds are going to get blowing. Okay, let's jump over. I'm going to do ownership projections. We'll look at weather real quick, and then we'll get you guys out of here. Okay, so I've hopped over to Fantasy National, and let's look at some ownership projections. I did just update this, so we should be pretty good. Pretty low right now. I think a lot of people there's a lot of things, right? I mean, you've got best ball for NFL, which I've even started to dabble a little bit in. You've got the PGA, so some people are trying to save up money, and I'm not saying that things won't fill, but right now that's a pretty low total for Wednesday around noon, but it'll probably get better. And also, right, it's the Byron Nelson. Not a horrible field. I mean, it's kind of crazy how many guys have already jumped out of this field, but, still got a few guys up top here, of course, with world number 2 playing still. I had a few of you guys ask me because, of course, I was kind of taking Jordan over Scotty, which, good thing, I'm kind of glad that he pulled out, because if he did have a wrist injury and just try to gut it through, that probably would not have worked out well for us if you were going to be playing Jordan, especially in showdown. But with all that said, of course, Scotty is now the heaviest owned, almost at 40%. You got Terrell Hatton at 21.5. And I didn't answer. I think what I was stating was I decided I'm pivoting my ownership from Spieth to Hatton and Hideki. Not that I'm not putting a couple Scheffler lineups in there, but more of the lineups because I just like the way it kind of builds better. So just side note on that if you're interested. Seabass, which this is, a lot of the models, and I kind of talked about him that, if you kind of take away the driving distance and then look at everything else, I think even past history, his short game, what he's shown on bent greens, that I think a lot of people are seeing what I did, that this could be a good track for him. You got Hideki, which hopefully all is well, and that he can go out and at least, do the scoring like we're used to seeing. And he's, believe he shot, I think, a 62 on Sunday last year here. So, we know he could definitely do it. Tom Kim, Keish Lee, Hoagie, those guys are all around 18% and up. You got Adam Scott, Kuchar, Stevens, Wu, Kim are all 15%. Lashley, which I told you guys, I don't think I picked him in my top 20, but then I told you guys it was kind of a miss. I think he would be a good play, especially if the weather's going to blow. I do like his game. I told you he kind of hits that low stinger and has, strong irons and the wins that I've seen. Jaeger back to, remember, I was all leaning on the iron guys. You got Joseph Bramlett, who's got the distance. Everything just typically can't putt. Jimmy Walker has been just in ridiculous form, and we'll see how that all works. Of course, he's a Texan. You got Brandon Wu, great ball striker, who typically struggles with the putter. Bidion, Davis Riley. I was curious on how much percent he would get, just how bad of a showing he had at Quail. Aaron Rise interested me, and this is probably the dumbest thing I've ever said on the show, but he's used to wearing those two gloves, and they look like almost weather gloves. So I was like, of course, he's very accurate. Typically, he also comes out very hot in a round one, which we saw, I don't know, it was the Mexico Open now. I forgot exactly day one that he led. But just he's already used to wearing kind of like weather gloves, two gloves, and he's pretty accurate. And if it is going to be windy and it is going to be rainy, I feel like, hey, and of course, he played a ton on the DP European Tour. Stallings has had good history here, but I don't think the greatest recent form. Carson Young, who's, I think for the price tag is a good play. Palmer, of course, in Texas, typically he shows up and had, I think this ownership would be a lot less if he didn't do what he did at the Wells Fargo, and that was kind of a spike performance for him. Mark Hubbard's actually, I saw he withdrew, and there's probably a few of these guys I might be talking about that did withdraw that I just don't remember. There's my Kevin Roy's at 7. And if it's highlighted, I think these are some of my picks, just so you know. Minwoo Lee, Will Gordon, and got Benny Griffin, Vincent Norman. Seeing there's Smotherman, less than 5. Don't mind Duncan, less than 4. Aaron Wise, I mean, so many things, right, on this. The price tag is not ridiculous, right? I mean, if he was in any kind of form out of this field, he would be probably in the, mid-9s. But because of what form he has shown and then taking the mental time off, if you're playing in a GPP and he stays below, like at this kind of ownership, I mean, we have no idea. Maybe the guy is just striping it and confident and, has got his head where he wants it. I mean, I don't know. I only put, I think, like 10 lineups together, and I don't know if I used him, but I might have to put some lineups together with him in it. EVR back to the irons, can get super streaky with the putter. There's Trey Mullinax, which I like that play. Now, this could blow up in my face, but I did put quite a few lineups with him in. And, of course, don't worry about Spieth, which showing at 2.8. Charlie Hoffman, you got him at 3%, which I always mentioned. He does show up in Texas, but the game's been pretty rough. There's MJ Duffy, maybe not bad. Vincent Whaley, trying to remember what it was now. He shows up at this course with, well, I should say this tournament, because I don't know if it's specific here. But within this tournament, he's like the top third on how many rounds he's shot into 60. He's got like 5 of them, I think it was. This is all off the top of my head looking through the PGA Tour stats. Now, do what you want with that, but I have seen him score. He can do that. He just typically can't keep it going. This guy is pretty interesting. This David Micheluzzi. He's a DP World Tour player. The guy has been putting some serious golf together over there on the DP World Tour. I don't know much about him. I'm not going to try to pretend I do, but I actually started looking at him from a betting perspective. They've got him, I think, at 250 to 1, which is, for a guy that we don't really ever see. I don't know why he's over here. I guess maybe he might have qualified for the PGA Tour or the PGA Championship. But anyways, he looks like a really solid player. If I did put a lineup with him in, so just someone, if you want to get a little unique, he's at 2%. And I don't think a lot of people are going to play him, because even like me, who watch the game pretty closely now, I don't watch the DP World Tour nearly as much, but I do keep an eye on it. Scott Piercy, who I kind of like, who's had those, spot rounds and just, shooting 6 to 8 under. I told you Cameron Champ is at least showing a little form, and, at one time was considered going to be an elite talent on the PGA Tour. And he's got 3 wins, but he's definitely fallen off. Chad Ramey, I think we saw what he did at the Players. Of course, he won. I believe it's Puerto Rico, Corrales, one of the two, whatever it is. But that was very windy when he did that. Matthias Schmid has got crazy distance off the tee. I'll just leave it at that. Augusto Nunoz, coming off with the Latam Tour, has been playing pretty solid golf. My buddy Blackbeard has withdrawn from the tournament that I remember. Kind of waiting for Garrett Cago to turn around. I mean, he would also be a pretty good play at this course. He can get hot. We know he can handle the winds. The lefty, it's just the putter is kind of fallen off, where I've always kind of viewed him as almost like a Sahith Theegala, like a pretty aggressive, solid putter. Does make eagles, good for scoring. I mean, he can definitely have those spot days. I kind of like to throw him in for a showdown play. All right, I think that's about it. Patty Kazires had some good showings here. He's very low ownership. Tanya Goyo's been showing up a little bit. There's Luke List, James Hahn. I think it's kind of interesting he's that low. Trying to see if anybody else really stands out to me that is getting a look. It's amazing how Russell Knox is just fallen off the face of the earth. Not that he was ever amazing, but he would, play some decent, consistent golf. And I feel like this year's just been a fiasco for him. Yeah, then just a bunch of names down here. I don't really see anything that stands out. I think even Camilo Villegas I saw withdrew from this tournament. Like I said, there was a lot of them. And he needs any points or anything he can get. So, I think guys that, I don't care what the weather looks like, man, if I need to, if I have a weaker field that I can do something in, I need all the starts I could get. So, I don't know, kind of shocking. All right, I think that's enough. You got some ideas of owner. Okay, as I mentioned, McKinney Municipal Airport is the area or the spot you're going to want to pull from. It's right next to the course. And we're going to want to scroll down to Thursday. And this was what I was kind of stating that, they mentioned between 9 and noon, there could be some rain, but it looks very minimal. Again, it's weather, right? But I'm more concerned about what the wind's doing. So you get this kind of a break right here, and I think tee times are starting. So this is an hour behind us. But yeah, local time, I'm guessing around 7:30. You got a full field, so maybe even like the central time, it'd be something around 6:45 or something like that, I would guess, sun up. Neither here or there. What I was going with is I do see right now it's telling me there's a small advantage. Also, I like the morning. Again, I told you the greens typically are fresh and you could definitely stick them. So just a little heads up on that. And then really it looks pretty steady the whole way, at least again what Windfinder's stating. So not a huge advantage. So I mean, if you were going to try to build, I guess you could say maybe the Thursday morning guys should have an advantage, because it looks like there's no advantage on Friday, at least from a win perspective. Okay, I think that's enough. Let's jump out of here and wrap this up. All right, guys, as always, thanks again for checking me out. I hope that helps, gives you some ideas. Again, we talked a little more about Showdown, got into some more shot link kind of overall general data, and, back to some kind of the comp core stuff. I wanted to at least get you guys, I think they're putting a couple pressers out today with, nothing of note, Cage Lee, and I forgot whoever else it was going to be. So I don't glean that there'll be a whole lot from there. But for me, all it is, hey, it should be a pretty good scoring fest, which is, I think, always fun from a DFS perspective, but a little more trickier, as I mentioned, to pin down the guys they're going to have, again, from a showdown, those, spot like out of nowhere 8 under, which they haven't done in maybe 2 years, whatever. But as always, click that like button, share it. And if you've not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. And follow me on Twitter at DFS Golf Guru, where I'll keep you updated on everything that I see coming through the PGA or anywhere on withdrawals or whatever I see during a tournament that I think is kind of funny. All right, guys, enjoy. I know we got the PGA coming up. I've already started to go through the course because it's at Oak Hill, and we haven't seen that course in like 10 years. I think, believe, was it Duffner won there last time, the PGA, so that gives you a good understanding of at least how long it's been. So I will have, of course, my show out probably Monday for the PGA, and I'll talk to you guys then. Enjoy the weekend, and catch up with you on Monday.